I'm Mason Mount. You're listening to the London is Blue podcast.
On to the news. Dan, presenter to be, what in the world do we have to talk about on a Monday night in the middle of our keep, sell, loan week? That's like Shark Week for us. It's holy.
Well, as Fabrizio Romano would say, here we go. It is transfer news. The pod signal went up early this morning with the news that Kai Havertz, basically for all intents and purposes, done, just final paperwork elements to be done. And then Thiago Silva, fresh off of his contract lapsing at Paris Saint-Germain, is coming to Chelsea as well. So two reinforcements, two veteran football players in top leagues making their way to Stamford Bridge.
Dan, would like to go ahead and move on from you. Appreciate that. To Nick for an immediate reaction. Don't hold back. Feel free to overhype and say something you might regret later.
Well, yeah. When have I ever done that? Never.
Predictions are great.
I think, as Ric Flair once said, "Woo!" I'm really excited about these two. I have a particular interest in Chelsea's success, and I think these are two players that could help us attain said success, both in areas of need, one being a little more shocking than the other, and we'll get into why. But, yeah, I think these are going to be good.
All right.
I test.
Yeah. Dan, your kind of initial reaction to the fact that Chelsea are one step away from signing Kai Havertz?
Well, I got to say, he is one of the key players in the Bundesliga. It's funny, Dan called him a veteran, and the guy just turned 21 in June, but he is a veteran. He's been playing serious minutes in the Bundesliga for a pretty good team in Bayer Leverkusen since 2016-17 season. So, he is a veteran, and he's coming in with some really fierce stats. The guy has been producing at a high level for, I would say, 3 seasons now. He is a player who came out of their organization. He's been there for 10 years, and he's clearly ready to step up and start making a big difference at the Champions League level.
I tell you what, that Mr. Dormer, that makes me lick my lips a little bit myself and rub my hands together. What a recipe. Your initial reaction?
Well, so I think I did the 3-word summary game, which I enjoy, but it's generational German get. He's coming. We got him. We got the signature. We got our guy. Obviously, a lot of confluence to that happening. The global market contracted. The amount of clubs available to go out and spend was limited. And, everything from our transfer ban to the players we sold off and Hazard and Morata have all given us a position to be able to, be poised in this moment to pick up the signature of someone who is, again, extremely talented and it's going to be super exciting.
Yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled. I'm not potentially playing this 3-word game, but I feel like, Nick, you have a comparison that you'd love to get into.
I'm going to buy you some time, so think of 3 whole words, Brandon. The 3 words I will use is feels like Hazard. Obviously, the fee is more than we paid for Eden Hazard back in 2012, but it feels like you're getting the 21-year-old up-and-comer, already kind of broken through, seems like a sure thing type of player. And they're obviously far different players. They have far different attributes, but it feels like that again to me, and that's huge.
Yeah, there's another thing that's really worth adding in here, which is when you look at the forwards that Chelsea have signed, you've got Pulisic, you've got Timo Werner, and you've got Kai Havertz. These 3 guys are Bundesliga veterans already and still quite young. They know each other. They've played against each other. They've played in a similar style. And a couple of them, at least, will be linking up in the national team. And then you add Ziyech into that, who is another Champions League level player. You've got your forward line basically set for a lot of years going into the future. And the more these guys play together, the better an understanding they're going to create between each other. It's something we actually saw between Eden Hazard and Cesc Fabregas when he was with Chelsea I actually tracked their statistics over the first season that they played together, and they became more productive together as those passing combinations started to become more routine for them.
Well, I am all about it. I mean, I always just want to go back to like, let's fucking go, the hype train, Chelsea rooting football. I mean, it's just, there's nothing but pure elation for me in this one. Like, I admittedly haven't watched all of the kind of hype tapes that are out there on YouTube because there are endless amounts of them. But when you hear people educated, like Dan with Smarter Scout, like people who have watched the Bundesliga, man, what's his name? That's always on ESPN FC, the German, Rafa Honigstein. I mean, he called him a generational talent. I tend to trust those people and what they have to say. And so I'm excited to get into it. Appropriately, we pulled in one of your tweets, Dan, on the Smarter Scout Twitter profile, and says, imagine if Havertz and Werner ended up playing up front together at Stamford Bridge and then take that partnership to Germany's international matches. Scary. What will that look like? Like, let's help paint that picture of a Timo Werner, Kai Havertz 1-2 punch up front for Chelsea.
You know what it reminds me of? I'm going to take it back to those four players that I was mentioning with Pulisic and Ziyech potentially, or even, Mason Mount, and you've got some youngsters in there too, like Gilmore. Throw all these players in and you've got a combination that might feel a little bit like Barcelona under Pep Guardiola in the late 2000s, when he would often use two sets of forwards who were not out-and-out strikers, but two sets of sort of forward players who could play wide, play centrally, and they would alternate. And the opposition really never knew which pair was going to come at him. And it was an extremely powerful way to play. And if you watched Guardiola's first match as coach of Manchester City, back when they had Nolito amongst other forwards, he had about 5 forwards in that match. And it was just an incredible, irresistible onslaught. And these players have that kind of versatility. Ziyech is a player that I've followed for years. I thought years ago he'd be a good fit in the Premier League because he can play centrally or out wide. You see the same with Pulisic. I keep using the German German and Slavic pronunciation because we're talking about Bundesliga, but Pulisic. And then you look at Werner, who's been used to playing coming in off the left side, and now with Havertz, who could play just about anywhere across the forward line. You have that versatility to have the same setup that Guardiola used at Barcelona in those very exciting years.
Dan Dormer, go ahead. I mean, if that's the kind of comparison that we have to look forward to, there's nothing short of excitement all the way around. But from your perspective, yeah, I mean, Kai Havertz, do you even know where he's going to play, or do you think we have an idea?
Do we know where he's going to play? That's a great question. I think that actually is the 100 million euro question, depending upon how much we end up paying out in incentives. And I think 80 million euros for a flat fee. But then, here's the other thing. You're paying an extra 10 million if you get back into the Champions League, which pays for itself. And then if you're winning Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues, you're paying another 10, which also pays for itself as well. So I'm not really concerned that there's a 20 million euro add-on bonus, because it just means that we're being successful. And so the deal worked out well. I think where I'm intrigued, Nick, is that we've seen Havertz play on a kind of a right wing. We've seen him play as that attacking mid. We've seen him play this season as the striker when there were injuries in Leverkusen. And so that versatility, we talked about a couple of the signings this season. We look at just how flexible they are is really going to make it, to Dan's point, so difficult for, I think, the coaching staff to figure out how they're going to deploy them, but also for teams on how they're going to defend them.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. I think Frank has a lot of decisions to make and probably a lot of decisions week to week to make. I mean, I think when we talked about the potential of adding Havertz in our keep sell loan in our midfield edition, which will be out Wednesday, as this is out on a Tuesday, we kind of illustrated him into a 4-3-3 as a number 8, right? Just for example. And he obviously has played deeper, So there's a lot of value to him kind of making runs that are a little bit deeper that way. I think when you've seen some of his passing statistics, and also you've seen some of the highlight reels of him just putting balls on plates for strikers who can't hit them into the net, you're like, oh man, if you had a quality striker, probably have 20, 30 assists this year. So I think his positional flexibility is going to be crucial. We have not said enough yet that there will be about 1,000 matches in 2 months less time this year. So it will be needed. He will likely play on the right. He'll likely play as a forward at some point. He'll likely play as an 8. He could play as a 10 if we play a 4-2-3-1. All of that, who knows? There's a lot you can do with a guy like that, and I think it'll just be kind of matchup dependent, and good luck if you're facing him.
I think a lot of people have been like, oh, this is going to be bad for Mason Mount. I think it's the opposite. I think this helps Mason because Kai Havertz does have the flexibility. It might actually let Mason kind of settle in to a midfield role and be an 8 and let him be the versatile player to play across the front 4 positions that we might have. So, I'm excited. Mr. Smarter Scouts, is there anything on the Kai Havertz profile page you guys have here that maybe you want to point out and kind of walk us through some of your analysis that is publicly available online for anyone to go check out?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that the position where he's really sort of settled down is as an attacking midfielder, where he lines up centrally but often then drifts off to the right. He's similar in that way to Ziyech, actually. The thing that's different about him, though, is the way he gets things done is with very incisive short passes. He doesn't make big, long passes into the box. He doesn't get into the box that often himself to shoot, though he can play as a striker. But when he's playing in that attacking midfield role, he's making these critical short passes that just unlock defenses. And his output in doing that for the last couple of seasons has been growing steadily and probably will continue to grow since, as I said, he's just 21 years old. We would expect him to be hitting his peak around 24, 25 and to have a couple more peak years after that. So there might be much more to come from him. The thing that's interesting about him is that he is also a great finisher. And so if you did want to play him up front, you probably would get some good change out of him. The thing at Bayer Leverkusen was that if he was playing up front, well, who was supplying the balls, But imagine with the guys that could be playing behind him for Chelsea, it could be quite a different picture. So, I could see them playing 2 up front, 2 wide, a double pivot, and 4 at the back. I could see them playing a 4-3-3. I could see them playing a 3-4-3. If there's 3 up front, yeah, he could play in the middle. Or he could play out on the right. He's just a very versatile player. What he's not necessarily great at is the dribbling, but that's just not his thing. He's very skillful in all the other areas, and he can play, like we said, just about any forward position.
Yeah, I like too in the article that you put together, Dan, that you talked about his ability at least to win aerial duels from dead balls or in the box. And so I think that's one of the things we've seen over the past 1 or 2 seasons is that with John Terry leaving, with Gary Cahill leaving, we haven't had some of the attackers or defenders who've been able either to win the ball away and put it into an opposition net or to knock it away from our own net. And I think that was one thing you guys called out that really is exciting to me. And that is another thing that we will benefit from.
And what an excellent segue.
That's a controversial thing to say, Dan, by the way, that Chelsea are not good at attacking or defending when the ball is in the air. I mean, careful. Careful.
Unpopular opinion, Chelsea edition.
Geez.
Well, I want to say one thing on that, which is in Olivier Giroud, you have one of the best aerial strikers in the game. But you may not have realized also, though I know you guys are extremely well-versed, that Ben Chilwell is a real force in the air, especially in dead ball situations. You don't usually look to your fullback for that. But Chilwell, who's coming in at left back, is really going to shore up part of that game. And then Thiago Silva, who is an aerial powerhouse. So to the degree he plays, that's a really good segue as well.
Well, and I think I would add on your analysis of Havertz, Dan, that when you talk about these short passes that unlock defenses, one of Chelsea's toughest parts of their season were against block 9, block 10 defenses, where you had teams sitting really, really deep, and Chelsea trying everything they can to break through and just not really being able to, right? So is a guy like Havertz, in your opinion, able to consistently kind of help break down some of those kind of lower block defenses, or is he going to have to adjust to that as well in the Premier League?
He won't have seen quite as much of it in the Bundesliga. It's true. You start talking about stuff like that, and I start asking myself, well, who really brought that to the Premier League? I think that he's going to be very influential. As I said, at Leverkusen, he was often the one who was providing those options. And when he wasn't able to do it, there weren't a lot of other people around him who could necessarily do that. At Chelsea, there are going to be other people. So it's going to be tougher for those low block defenses because he's not the only one that they're going to have to worry about. Now, it's important to have a target man who can bring down the ball in those situations if you have to go over the top, or if you can make those shorter passes, someone who's really good receiving the ball to feet. And that's what we're going to see, I think, with Werner. Werner's really good at receiving the ball to feet. And yeah, if you had to use Giroud to get the ball over the top, maybe you could do that too.
Options. I'm finding a common theme here with Chelsea's business, and Frank loves options. He loves tactical flexibility, loves positional flexibility, and it's a huge signal of intent, obviously, by the club. This is a ton of money in or outside of a pandemic transfer window. And so I think that that's really great to see, because as we all know, this is after signing Timo Werner and Hakim Ziyech. It sounds like it is one of still a handful of deals to happen where players are coming into Chelsea. Now that we've got all of the in-depth analysis from Dan with Smarter Scout, gentlemen, we can grade this and make another great prediction about something that we can guarantee, which is the future here. Dan, how would you grade the transfer?
I give it a 12 out of 10.
Okay. Sliding scale, I can see.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason I give it the extra bonus points is for how infuriated it has made other supporters, and not to take too much joy in other people's plight, but I have enjoyed today the people asking for an inquest from UEFA into Chelsea for getting this type of transfer over the line. In addition to then, trying to figure out how they can revisionist history, Kai Havertz not being as good as he actually is, and trying to work through the mental hula hoops that they have to do to make that happen it's been quite a day. It's been quite a day, Nick.
Quite a day indeed. I do revel in their suffering. So I'm going to give it an A+. This will likely be the highest profile transfer that we've ever had coming in, and it will likely be the highest profile transfer of any team this window, just given the amount of money that's being bantered about. Unless Neymar goes somewhere, it could be really that impactful. The way that Frank has been backed so far this window is absolutely insane. I mean, it is like 2003-04 Abramovich going to get the targets that he wants right now. And, I think while there's been a lot of movement in how Chelsea's business model, Dan, has been set up over the years, it is clear that they have kind of changed a lot in how they go to buy talent. And so they're going after quality and not quantity right now.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out, too, though, that though he spent a lot of money in this window, how much do you expect to spend on forwards in the next 3 or 4 windows? I mean, these guys are young, and you expect to hold on to them. And then, you've got Tammy Abraham, too, and Mason Mount, and, Billy Gilmore. You're setting yourself up for a while here. That I think, is the thinking. And some of these players, too, if one of them really catches fire, maybe Real Madrid comes calling and you're not losing money on that. So I think from a financial responsibility point of view, you have to look at it over the cycle. And this cycle is just starting.
Right. And the other thing too is like you lose William, you lose Pedro. You know, Giroud is on a 1-year deal. The average age of your squad has gone from relatively kind of upper 20s to kind of mid 20s again.
Firmly.
And that's, that's nothing. You get the Bayern Munich squad that just won the Champions League, which I think is kind of the standard bearer in world football right now for how they play. I mean, they were just insane at the end of the year. That's where you're trying to get to, right? And that's the model you're chasing. You're going to chase Real Madrid again at some point, and it's going to be imperative that Chelsea have the right talent to try and catch them.
And you also added players who have either Champions League or European Europa League experience too. We talk about some of the things that we struggled with this season. It's that acclimatization from playing in the Premier League to now playing against the elites in Europe. And now you add in a Kai Havertz, a Timo Werner, a Hakim Ziyech, who all have that type of experience in their wheelhouse. That's another exciting element too, where, you weren't able to get everybody the experience they needed this season after you really were out of it the moment we drew to Bayern.
Yeah.
So my grade is a 1 because in Germany, that means excellent in their grading system. 1 is great, 6 is insufficient. So since we're all using different grading systems, might as well throw a 1 in there.
I got a bunch of 6s growing up. I think that was probably accurate for me personally.
I would agree. But hey, you know what? We're going to take a quick break. When we're back, though, it's all about one Thiago Silva, who is clearly ready to leave Paris post UCL destruction. No, I'm just kidding. It was more disappointment than anything. But thank you to the sponsor for supporting the podcast financially. Really appreciate you. And we will be right back.